Okay. Little past 7. We'll call this meeting to order. Meeting night on special meeting concerning case number 2476, Fulbrook Associates. Members of the board who are present: Mr. Hanson, Mr. Kyle, Mr. Bingham may be here. Come in. We have not heard from him. Of course, myself. On your left, we have a court reporter. We have just a special case this evening, and no other business on our agenda. As the board will hear this case in an informal manner without strict compliance with rules of procedure used in a court trial. We ask the applicant, individuals interested in this case, to step in front of the table and explain the circumstances involved in the application. Applicants may present their case themselves through their attorneys or other representatives. Fellow board members and I, as well as solicitor, may ask the applicant questions from time to time during the applicant's presentation or its conclusion. All persons having an interest in the application be given the opportunity to ask questions of the applicant, offer evidence of their own, from the board position on the matter. In the interest of the prompt and orderly disposition of the case, we ask that interested people to refrain from speaking until the applicant's presentation has been completed and the board has had an opportunity to question the applicant. At the beginning of this case, I'm going to ignore that at this time since we've already been into this case for a while. And I don't see any additional people here or on Zoom. People who have been given status of a party will be entitled to receive notice of the decision in this case and will be entitled to participate in any subsequent appeal or rehearing. Individuals who are not given party status may nevertheless ask questions, present evidence, but will not receive notice of the decision, will not automatically be entitled to participate in any appeal or subsequent rehearing. If you desire to be a party, we will ask you sign the entry of appearance form at appropriate time. Although each party will receive a written copy of the decision, the mechanics of typing and signing the decision takes approximately 4 weeks from the conclusion of the hearing. We ask that each person who asks a question or makes a statement first state his or her name and address for the court reporter. Lastly, in the interest of time, I will administer the oath of affirmation to the applicants and to everyone and anyone who anticipates making any statement with respect to this case this evening. So at this time, will you all rise, please? Even if I swore you in before, please, it makes it easier. Under penalties of perjury, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please say I do. I do. Thank you. Everyone can stand, we'll salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Beth, the case has been duly advertised and posted according to the Sunshine Law and the MPC. Gentlemen, you should have received a copy of the board minutes from July 18, 2024. There's no additions, deletions, or corrections. Can I have a motion to approve the board minutes of July 18? So moved. Moved by Mr. Kyle, second by Mr. Hanson. Any discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Hanson? In favor. Mr. Luce, abstained due to absence. Mr. Kyle, in favor. And I'll also vote in favor. The board minutes of July 18th, 24 have been approved. Also, for the record, young lady on Zoom, Judy, is taking the board minutes for us. And we also have, as I stated earlier, the court reporter present. Just for the record's sake, members of the board who are present met with our attorney earlier this evening to discuss some legal issues pertaining to the board's functions on this case. With that, also at this time, I will turn it over to our solicitor,
Okay,
Mr. Hess.
thank you. As the chairman said, there was a meeting prior to this to discuss some legal issues. And also there was a telephone conference today between me and the attorneys on both sides of the matter, just to go over some procedural issues. And just want to put on the record what those issues are and how they might be handled. So first, with respect to expert witnesses who will be testifying based on expert reports that they have prepared, which will be offered for admission into the record. The board would like to set some reasonable parameters in order to prevent delays that could occur due to the other side not having seen the report prior to the hearing. So from now on, if an expert report has been prepared and will be offered for admission, the board would like that, ask that both sides follow the rule that, they share the, report with the opposing counsel and board solicitor at least 3 business days prior to the hearing. So we're meeting usually on Thursday night, so, at the end of the day on Monday. Second, prior to this evening's hearing, counsel for applicant had submitted a memorandum of law requesting that the board reconsider its decision not to qualify Michael Samuels as an expert in fiscal analysis. And although exhibits 42 and 43 were withdrawn based on the board's ruling, I believe the applicant would like to see would seek to have those exhibits offered for admission. And for Mr. Samuels to testify on subjects as contained in those reports, if I understand applicant's counsel.
That's correct.
Okay, and I mean, the memo speaks for itself, but is that basically the gist of your request is stated in the memo?
Yes,
Okay. And Attorney Piper for the township would like an opportunity to respond to that memo, and she has indicated she would submit a response by October 3rd, which is 2 weeks from today. Correct.
That's correct.
And then the board would make a decision on that request at the next hearing in this case, and therefore Mr. Samuels is not here tonight. And other than that, I understand the applicant will have 1 witness this evening, and who's a civil engineer, correct?
correct. Registered landscape architect.
Okay, and we'll be testifying as to what the proposed relief that applicant would be asking the board for.
Correct.
And we anticipate getting through direct and cross-examination on this witness tonight.
We do.
Okay. All right, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Beth, would you call the case, please?
Case number 2476, Overland City Denver LLC filed a precedent substandard validity challenge pursuant to section 916.1A1 of the PA Municipalities Planning Code relating to its property at Tenby Way, parcel number 290-516-54000000, located in the medium density residential zone, claiming the zoning ordinance unlawfully excludes high density multifamily dwellings.
Okay, thank you. And I was saying he was present this evening. I was remiss and did not say for the record that we have our board solicitor, Jason Hess, with us, and also Beth Brown, who's the township zoning officer. With that, think we caught up on some of the technical stuff, so we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Nagan.
Just want to note for both attorneys that Mr. Luce has brought himself up by reading the transcript of the last.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mine may go. So with that, Mr. Nagel,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question for both attorneys in regard to the last, for the last meeting. I'm going to address this to both attorneys, and I'd be interested in your answer. We'll start with Mr. Nagel, you can answer first, but one of the things that the MPC section 105 states is to ensure that municipalities adopt zoning ordinances which are generally consistent with the municipality's comprehensive plan. Kind of got the impression at our last meeting that you didn't think that that was the case. Is that true? Do you think that the zoning ordinance does match, is consistent with the comprehensive plan? I know Mr. Hurd brought up with consistent and inconsistent.
I guess I would say, I think there are some issues with consistency, but I wasn't, what I was saying last time, as I recall, Mr. Hanson, is that that's not the basis for this claim.
And I understand, but your witness kept kind of leaning that direction. So, I understand we have a while to go yet, but I would really appreciate, in your summation that you cover that issue. Ms. Piper, I'll ask you the same question. Do you think the township is generally consistent with the zoning ordinance is consistent with the municipality's comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll certainly be sure to address that in the summation at the end of the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
anything else?
No, we're not correct.
Again, once again, we'll try this. Mr. Nagel, you have the floor.
Thank you. The applicant calls Jason Best.
What was the last name?
Best,
BESD?
correct.
Beth, would you state your name and address? And please, you gotta be fairly close to these mics. Not only, well, there's nobody in the audience except people inside. Somebody might pop in on Zoom.
Understood.
Make it easier.
Is this okay? Okay,
Beth, can you, yep, that's good. Thank you.
sure. Jason Best is my name. I'm a registered landscape architect, senior project manager at ELA Group. And that's 743 South Broad Street, Lidditz, Pennsylvania.
Mr. Best, I'm showing you a document marked as Exhibit A46. Would you please identify that document?
This is my CV.
Does A46, your CV, accurately reflect your education, experience, and qualifications as a registered landscape architect?
It does, yes.
Can you briefly walk the board through your education and qualifications and experience?
We will stipulate to Mr. Best's qualifications as an expert in landscape architecture and planning.
You have,
I have the CV. I was provided with a copy earlier today. We have no objection to his testimony.
with that.
Ready to qualify as an expert?
We will qualify them. You don't have any questions? Okay, then, yes, we will qualify Mr. Best as an expert witness.
Thank you. Just for background, Mr. Best, as a registered landscape architect, what work and factors specifically do you engage in? And you can refer to your CV for specific examples if needed.
Sure. Predominantly, my work responsibilities are to, as a project manager and landscape architect, oversee design projects for our clients who happen to be with the private and public sector. And that entails design for site development and also taking plans and various documents through the land development process, zoning, that kind of thing.
Your company ELA Group, Inc., where is it based?
The corporate office is in Lidditz here in Lancaster County, and we have 2 satellite offices in Pennsylvania, also one in State College and one in Butler.
Have you worked on and testified in cases pertaining to multifamily residential projects?
Have.
When you're developing a land development plan and engaging in the site design that goes along with the development of such a plan, what types of things do you have to consider and prepare?
Land development planning generally starts with a site analysis. Very often a client will already have a piece of property that they own and want to develop, but they may not realize the full potential in some of the constraints. And so it generally starts with a site analysis and a little bit of a due diligence exercise to explore the viability of the program that they want to impose upon a site. And then it goes from there into conceptual design generally, where there's always a back and forth with the client to make sure that the design is meeting the needs of what they want to achieve. And then that leads to a land development submission generally and a process through which plans are approved and ultimately acted upon.
And components of that plan would include all of the different elements that would be shown on the land development plan, for example, stormwater management, parking layout, grading, building situs.
Correct, yeah, I mean, we obviously are using the subdivision land development ordinance and the zoning ordinance as a guide as the plans are prepared and fully comply usually with the list of things that the plans are supposed to show and so that the plans can be deemed appropriate.
Are you familiar with the Colebrook property that is the subject of this application?
I am, yes.
I'm going to show you a plan. I'm showing you a plan marked Exhibit A47. Did you identify that Exhibit A47, please?
Certainly, this is a plan that ELA we prepared on behalf of our client, Holbrook Associates, and this is a plan that seeks to develop an additional 308 multifamily residential units on the Colebrook Apartments property.
Did you prepare and or oversee the preparation of all aspects of A47?
I did, yes.
May I just interrupt for 1 second?
Sure, Mr. Hearn.
So it's clear, A47 is 2 sheets.
Is that correct, Mr.
Both.
Best?
Both sheets were prepared. Yeah. That's correct.
Got all of the question.
Really?
This first sheet of A47 and the second sheet, is this what was presented to the board back last year at the variance request?
No,
It was from all-
correct. Mr. Best, just as,
Yeah.
sorry, Mr. Hurt, are you okay?
Yeah, just want to make sure, just for the record.
Sure. Just as a follow-up to Mr. Hurt's question, Mr. Best, could you just please identify what the first sheet of A47 is, and then what the second sheet of A47 is?
Certainly, the first sheet of A47 is an enlargement of what effectively is shown on the second sheet. Same plan, but the second sheet has a aerial underlay and shows what is on the first sheet in the context of sort of a wider view of the surrounding neighborhood area.
With respect to the second sheet that you just described, does the aerial imagery that you've laid the site layout into reflect what is out in the field in the area shown on this sheet today?
It's obscuring what's in the field. If you're talking about the field, meaning surrounding the property, then yes, I think this is a very recent aerial image.
Can you walk the plan through? Let's start with sheet 1 of A47, specifically the configuration of the buildings and the open space.
Sure. Yeah, if we could have the first sheet of A47 on the screen, that's great, thank you. Okay. So this plan, as I mentioned, proposes 308 multifamily apartment units. And it's showing four-story buildings that are elevator served, each having between 74 and 78 units in them. And those are organized in a fashion that clusters them tightly within the center of the site. And they all are facing inward on a courtyard or a green space, amenity space, if you will. And that central space is one of the defining features of the plan. Intended to provide for space for the enjoyment of the residents and offer them a space within which to do the things that people do outdoors to enjoy themselves. And the spaces there relate to each of the buildings in a way that there are some great changes we'd anticipate between them. This is not completely flat, but flat enough that that's all going to be navigable, accessible, so to speak, between the buildings. And just in terms of in perspective a little bit, the space that's in the middle of that building is slightly larger than a full-size soccer field in area. So it's considerable. It's about 2.3 acres. But the buildings being close together like this and with this space carved out in the middle helps to keep the site plan compact. And what we've done is we've organized the parking associated with those 308 units around the periphery of those buildings. And so the parking, relates to the buildings in a way that you would expect with ADA spaces associated with each. We anticipate that would fully comply with the applicable ordinance standards. And we were confident that this number of parking spaces is sufficient for the plan. Would point out that the access to this portion of the site integrates directly with the existing access and street pattern within Colebrook Apartments. The bottom of the screen, trying to see if I can actually move this. The red dot's not gonna work on that, but it will work here. These two roadway connections, and it's probably more visible on the paper copy that's in front of me, but they connect with both Welsh Drive and Tenby Way respectively, and eliminate what is now sort of a traffic circle or a cul-de-sac with an island in the middle of it. But we maintain circulation at the existing portion of the campus, connect the two roads with a proposed spur that would effectively allow residents to navigate through the existing portion of the development the same way that they would now.
So on the right side, A47, if I'm looking at it with the exhibit label to the right-hand side, where it says, and you can't see it on the screen right now because I think it's not scrolled down quite far enough, but on the physical exhibit, you can see it. It has a label on there that says private drive. There we go. Now we can see it on the screen.
Excuse me. You sure? Oh, there we go. I was on the wrong spot. Okay, so I was just gonna say, I got that over. Thank you. Sure, sorry about that. I thought I was pointing at the screen and evidently I was not. These are the two connections. This one to Tenby Way, this one to Welsh Drive.
And so you're referring to the Tenby Way access that goes past what appears to show some existing buildings, correct? And that's the access on the upper right side of the plan, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then on the lower right side of the plan, there's a second access labeled private drive.
Correct.
So is the Tenby Way, and you can see the T for Tenby Way on the far right side of the exhibit, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And so the Tenby Way and the private drive, are those existing access drives within the existing Colebrook apartment complex?
They are, yes.
And are the buildings shown on that side of the plan on this exhibit some of the existing apartment buildings located within the existing Colebrook apartments site?
That's correct, yes. Those are the existing buildings.
With respect to going back to the area inside of the four buildings that are shown on your plan, Mr. Best, there's some lighter sort of blotched or spotted kind of light green, lime green areas. There's four of them, one in front of each building. And then around those, within the interior of the four building sort of courtyard area are some darker medium green areas. Can you explain what those are and whether they're pervious or impervious areas?
Sure. This is conceptual, and so this is, of course, something that, bears further design, but those are intended, and they're gestures to, evoke a patio or a terrace area. And when I say those, I mean the lighter areas that are associated with each of the buildings at the rear or at the interior. So, you can imagine a connection between the interior space and an exterior terrace or patio area where there may be a fire pit and a row of Adirondack chairs, there may be a pool. There just may be some passive recreation opportunities for places for people to go out and cook on a grill or, read a book in a chair. But the other areas within that courtyard, the darker green, the gesture is more of a lawn area where we can imagine some more active recreation, some, dodgeball, can jam or something like that. There's and then unifying sidewalk connections that, would connect all those spaces.
And then the lighter blotchy areas in front, directly in front of the, would you call those the rear or entry points of the building, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the access points into the interior of the building.
And those areas would be, it sounds like you're saying a combination of hardscaping, landscaping, and grass.
I think so, yeah. I think it's fair to say that those would be a mixture of that, once a real hardline design is done.
And there would be pedestrian sidewalks access
Absolutely.
throughout to get into each of the buildings, correct?
Correct.
Can you explain how sewer and water would be provided for these buildings?
Sure. The existing Colebrook Apartments property is presently served by public sewer and public water. It is the expectation that those facilities would be extended into this portion, this undeveloped portion of the campus to serve these additional 308 units. And we have reached out to both the Lancaster Area Sewer Authority and City of Lancaster Water Department and have ascertained that sufficient capacity does exist within those respective systems to support this development.
With respect to the circulation that you mentioned, you talked about Tenby Way and the other private drive that's labeled private drive. Can you run the board through circulation around the site from those private drives in and back out again?
Certainly. Yeah, the intent behind this was to make sure that we had two ways in and out of this so that we didn't effectively create a huge cul-de-sac. And so there's a determined effort to take what is Tenby Way, which is to the right of the screen as it's appearing on the wall there, and keep that separate all the way up. And when I say up, this is up gradient to where the flat area where this development will occur will be, and to do the same thing with Welch Drive on the left of the screen, so that if one of those were ever to be blocked by an accident or some other activity that renders that unusable, that there would still be a way in and out for emergency egress and so forth. And I think I mentioned the spur at the bottom, and again, bottom of the screen, but also bottom grade wise. This is so that the folks that live within the existing units, the Colebrook Apartments, don't have to drive the whole way up to the new development to go from what is now Tenby Way to Welch Drive and vice versa. But the extensions of Tenby Way and Welch Drive ultimately end up in parking areas, and parking areas you can circumnavigate the entire apartment complex with those. And so once you're up on the level of the proposed apartment buildings, there are ways to go clockwise around or counterclockwise around, but several ways to navigate that.
And what you're referring to as the spur would be the connection between the private drive labeled access road and the Tenby Way drive.
Yes,
right?
yeah, that's exactly right.
That generally runs perpendicular to those two drives.
Correct.
And in the background of the existing Colebrook facility, behind the private drive as it comes up towards the proposed development, there's a circle there with what appears to be a road going around it. Do you know what that is?
And that's an existing facility. That's actually where Welch Drive and Tenby Way join presently, where it is, and that was the jumping off point for what the original development was intending to extend up the slope. There was to be a connection there to what was originally proposed back in 1971, but effectively that is a cul-de-sac or at best a traffic circle. I believe it's one-way traffic pattern, and you know, when you get to the end, you go counterclockwise around, and you can either go back the way you came or choose the other route.
But that exists out in the field at the Colebrook apartment site today.
That is an existing feature.
I'm showing you a document marked 848 for identification. Can you identify that document?
Certainly, this is what I've been referring to as an in situ view of what this development would look like. What we've done is we've modeled this crudely in 3D and dropped that into Google Earth to help people to understand how this fits into the Colebrook Apartments property and into the surrounding area. And the second part of this is to the bottom, and that is also a three-dimensional rendition of the plan. But that actually takes it a step further and shows some red and yellow lines that are actually 1 foot contours in a proposed condition. So this exhibit shows three-dimensional model, but also shows a grading study that we did that was intended to vet the project from a grading perspective to make sure that it is a viable possible grading outcome. And so what you're seeing is the result of that, and the disturbance are within the boundaries of the property.
This exhibit has essentially 4 primary images on it. Can you please start at the bottom left and work clockwise and explain what each of the images shows?
Certainly. So at the bottom left, we have a grading study, three-dimensional. It's sort of an axonometric view. This is a view from the south. So north would be the top of the page, more or less. And this shows the buildings extruded and at the height that they'd be proposed to be relative to the surrounding area. So those are 4-story buildings with a flat roof. And it shows the parking is dark gray, and it also shows the courtyard space. And there's an aerial underlay image that's sort of snipped to what would be regarded as the limit of disturbance, and so the limit of grading. And the grading, as I mentioned previously, is demonstrated on this particular image in red and yellow parallel lines. Those are proposed contours. And so you can start to make out, the trained eye can make out some features there that, are intended to be stormwater management facilities. And, if you look closely, you can see how, the contours spread apart and, create a more flat looking area where the parking is proposed. But, where they're tight together, those are slopes, movable slopes. To the top left of the page, as I mentioned, this is the same model, just with a different treatment to the surface, more of a green grass-like texture and color. And that was, as I said, dropped into Google Earth so that we could demonstrate what this might look like within the context of both the Colebrook Apartments property and the neighborhood as a whole. And that view is similarly oriented in that it is a view from the south, and you're looking across the property with north to the top of the page and Route 283 just above.
With respect to that next image that you're identifying on the top left, does the satellite imagery that shows on that image surrounding the Colebrook property accurately reflect what's out in the field in the area shown on this image?
It does, yes.
Can you show on this in situ image where the existing Colebrook Apartments property is approximately?
Certainly. I'm pointing to, yeah, I can do that. Sorry. This roughly forms where my laser pointer is, the western property boundary. And I'm making my way counterclockwise along what would be the south property boundary. As we get down to about this point, the property actually continues out to Harrisburg Pike, and then up this way for a bit, and then back up. And then it comes across just to the south of where the existing tennis courts and swimming pool are for the complex. It runs along Roarstown Road, and then it comes back behind or to the north of these units, and then sort of follows the tree line that you see here just at the periphery. So that's roughly the existing property for the Colebrook Apartments complex.
Is this image oriented north-south?
North is to the top, south is the bottom.
And so the existing, from the image showing the proposed development, the relief development, to the right of that on the plan would be east, correct?
That's correct.
And that's where the existing developed Colebrook Apartments are located?
Correct.
And to the east of that, you identified a road. What did you say the name of that road is?
Roarstown Road.
And on the opposite side of Royerstown Road, further to the east, there's additional development. Do you know what that is?
Not 100% sure what it's called, but yes, that's another multifamily development. And there's a road that goes from the driveway, actually, that goes through that over to McGovernville Road.
And behind the,
Mr. Nagel,
yes, sir.
Mhm.
to the east of Roartown Road, is that not back two separate high density apartment complexes?
Meaning over here, there's two different ones.
Yes.
That I'm not 100% sure of, but you might be right.
I would
Pretty sure.
take issue with the characterization of high density, but I would agree with you that it's another apartment complex.
But it's two separate apartment complexes.
Correct. I think what you're saying, Mr. Hanson, is that the apartment complex on the east side of Royerstown Road is a different apartment complex from Colebrook Apartments.
There's two, there's Colebrook, there's one on the east, and then there's another one farther east, closer to Governorville.
I'm not aware if the another one further east is shown on this plan or not, but I understand your question.
Can the township help me out here? Correct. There are two separate apartment complexes.
Mr. Best, looking to the west side of what's labeled on the image at the top left of A48. There's a stand of trees and then another facility. Do you know what that is?
Understand that's a cold storage facility. Not sure what it's storing, but it's, my understanding it's cold storage.
Is it typical when you're designing a plan like A47, what you've shown on A48, that you receive the sizing and layout area of the buildings that you show on the plan from the project architect?
Yes,
Is that how you obtain the information for the buildings in this case?
it is, yes.
Referring back to A47, sheet 1. You show some, it looks like trees around on the development site.
Yeah, so we show both existing tree masses and proposed individual tree plantings.
Going back to A48. Can you finish the description of the last two images, continuing the clockwise
Sure.
direction?
So at the top right of this exhibit, we have a similar view to that at the top left, except that this is viewed from the east looking to the west. And so what we're showing here at the bottom of that view is Georgetown Road. And what you're seeing here is the property boundary that's on the north side of the existing Colebrook Apartments. And it starts to angle up to the northwest, right where this farm field and the hedgerow right beside it interface. And it goes more westerly and back behind the proposed development. But this provides a pretty good view of how the access drives interface with the existing private street network within the existing Colebrook Apartments complex.
So while you're on that picture, these two buildings here, are they part of your complex?
No, they are not. Sorry, I think I might have been pointing there and I should have been pointing here.
Miss,
One more question. The access roads going in there, are they are two ways?
They're both two
Two
A.
ways, okay, thank you.
Mr. Hanson, if I may, when you were asking about the two buildings and you were using your pointer, is it fair to say that you were identifying or indicating the two white buildings to the north?
Correct, and the reason I was asking, because when he was going with this pointer, he was going like this, right across this white building.
And the reason I'm asking is because the record doesn't really indicate where the pointer is. We won't be able to see that in the record. So I just want to make sure we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so continuing to the bottom of the sheet, bottom right side of the exhibit, we have a image similar to that on the bottom left. It is a grading study that shows the proposed topography and shows how the proposed streets and parking might be graded along with some stormwater impoundment areas. And shows how the limited disturbance relates to the underlying area, and that we have a aerial image underlay. And again, the bottom right relates to the top right because it's the same model, just has a different skin. And so what appears as contours in an aerial underlay at the bottom is the same as what appears as green at the top, if that makes sense.
You stated earlier that one of the things that one of the elements of a land development plan that you have to look at is the stormwater management, and you referenced some stormwater management areas shown on some of the images on A48. Do you, in the work that you do, create MPDS erosion and sedimentation control plans for projects and conduct stormwater investigation due diligence?
Yes, I engage in collaborative effort with our engineering staff to prepare those documents and, design stormwater management facilities for projects that we take on. And, ensure that those are in harmony with the program, the site program that the clients are asking of us.
Have you analyzed the suitability and feasibility of A47 and the other views of this iterations of this plan that's shown on A47 sheet 1 from a stormwater management perspective?
We have not prepared a stormwater management design, complete design, but we have done a preliminary analysis of the site, with available resources online and desktop, so to speak. And yes, we have come to the conclusion that, that a stormwater management plan can be engineered for this development.
Can you explain in a little more detail what you've investigated regarding stormwater management for the plan?
Certainly, yeah, we know, based upon the grading study, what the likely limited disturbance is going to be. And so therefore, since it's an NPDES permit that we're going to be likely pursuing with this, we started to, back into what our water quality and our volume reduction and our likely rate control volumes would be. We know that we're adding approximately 9.2 acres of impervious. And so we were able to, make some generalizations about what those volumes might look like and use the rest of the property that isn't, paving to start to imagine where those BMPs might be located to attenuate what we need to do for the ordinance.
Is this the same or similar exercise that you've engaged in for other stormwater due diligence on projects that you've worked on in Lancaster County and elsewhere?
Absolutely, yeah. The projects often start with an exercise like this just to, make sure that we're not getting out over our skis, that we can actually accomplish what we're setting out to do.
And have you done that type of analysis for an apartment project like the one that's shown on exhibits A47 and A48?
I'm sorry,
Have you conducted that type of a stormwater analysis
for this project?
for apartment projects, just like the one that you're showing here?
Yes.
Based on the evaluation that you've conducted for this site and on your experience in conducting stormwater due diligence for other similar types of projects, what is your opinion of the site's suitability for stormwater management for this 308 unit plan that you've shown the board this evening?
Well, based on, our analysis preliminarily, based upon what we understand of the underlying geology, which surprisingly is shale and not karst for the most part. And also the fact that we are not dealing with a flat site, which are extremely difficult to work with. We are confident that we can engineer a solution for this first from a stormwater management perspective.
Are you confident that you can design a plan for stormwater management that would be accepted by the township engineer as sufficient to address stormwater on the site?
Yes.
Referring to A47, you mentioned that you show parking on the perimeter of the buildings, essentially, I think is what you said.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit more about the amount of parking that you've provided? And if you know what the unit mix in the buildings and the total number of units?
Certainly. Yeah, the subdivision land development ordinance provides for the parking burden in a way that's progressive and relates to the ITE manual in terms of the use classifications. And so we engaged a study to understand, based upon the unit mix that's being proposed, how many parking spaces we would need as recommended by ITE. We've actually provided, well, I'll start by saying that the unit mix for the 308 units includes 12 studios, 141 one-bedroom apartments, 143 two-bedroom apartments, and 12 three-bedroom apartments. And the calculation that was done based upon that mix of unit types was approximately 1.31 parking spaces per unit. We are showing something closer to 1.7 parking spaces per unit because we felt that that was probably a more appropriate solution. So we are, according to the ordinance, overparked. So
I understand everybody goes by IT, which is a joke, but how many total spaces?
525. 525.
Thank you.
And when you refer to the one, I think you said 1.31 that you came up with. Was that your conclusion of what the township ordinance would require in terms of parking for this development?
It is, yes.
But A47 shows more than that. I think you said 1.7.
1.7.
Can you provide an overview of the open space areas on the plan? And if you know how much open space on the interior of the buildings, how much open space on the exterior of the parking areas?
So the open space, I think I mentioned earlier, we are anticipating an impervious increase of approximately 9.25 acres. And we know that this portion, this undeveloped portion of the property is roughly 27 acres. And so, we're looking at, roughly, 17 or so acres of open space theoretically around that is not going to be impervious. Within the building area there in the courtyard or in the meeting, in the central space, I think I mentioned previously, that's approximately 2.3 acres. And obviously that's not all going to be pervious, but that is a amenity space for the residents, and at least 60% of that is going to be pervious.
Would this site be able to, would the developer be desirous of it? Would this site be able to accommodate walking trails that could be utilized by, excuse me, the residents of these 4 buildings that you show at a minimum?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you here for a second?
Certainly.
Mr. Bass, you're saying this is 308 total apartments, correct?
Correct.
With this addition and the existing apartments, what's that bring the density to per acre?
That would be 650 units over 36 acres, 10.27
Per acre.
dwelling units per acre.
Thank you.
You mentioned an MPDS permit earlier. Can you explain what that is?
National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. It is a federal permit. DEP is the permittee in most cases where a general permit is involved. In this case, the simplest way to explain it is we've got better than 1 acre of anticipated disturbance, and therefore this will fall into the purview of the NPDES permit.
So you would need to obtain an NPDES permit for this project.
Correct.
In your opinion, would you be able to do that?
Yes.
Would you anticipate that there would be other outside agency permits that would have to be obtained as part of this project?
Yes.
What would those include?
I would anticipate a sewage facilities planning module exemption or potentially full planning if it's warranted. That's administered by DEP. We would likely have, obviously water and sewer, we'd have to obtain approvals from those separate agencies and you know, there's always potential for, you know, improvements, like if we get into a traffic impact study, there may be signal timing changes and may become involved in that.
And when you say PennDOT may become involved, would that potentially include the need to obtain a PennDOT permit?
Yeah.
With respect to all of the permits that you mentioned and any other permits that you could anticipate needing, are you confident that you could obtain all of those permits
Yeah,
for the proposal that we see on 847?
yes.
In your opinion, generally the development that you show here is shown on approximately 27 acres, is that correct?
Correct.
In your opinion, would that area in this site be able to accommodate more than 308 additional multifamily apartment units?
Yes.
Is it your professional opinion that given all applicable standards and requirements, that the subject property can accommodate the 308 units shown on A47?
Yes.
May I have a moment, please?
Any question?
Mr. Best, and I'm only gonna ask your opinion here. A lot of testimony has been on basically verbiage, medium density versus high density versus unit per acre. In your opinion, for what you see here in Lancaster County, what is a good number of units per acre for a high density?
I think that varies based upon the context. In the city, you're gonna have far higher densities, but, you know, for the suburban area, 10 to 14. Again, my opinion.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jason, do you have any questions?
Withhold until after a cross examination.
That then.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Best. Mr. Best, have you personally been involved in any land development projects in East Hempfield Township before this one?
I don't think so. I've been involved with several that never got that far, but yes.
Okay.
I think that's my answer.
Okay. And have you ever visited this site that's the subject of tonight's application?
Yes.
Were you involved with the prior plan that was submitted to this board a couple of years ago that called for 196 new units?
I was, yes.
Okay. So as we sit here tonight, that plan was 196 proposed units, and now you're proposing 308. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you previously proposed a density of 8.5 units per acre. And now per your testimony this evening, you've increased that to 10.27 units per acre. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Am I also correct that in your prior plan, you had smaller buildings and more numerous buildings as part of that plan?
That is correct also.
Okay. And for the board's reference and for our record, I will note that that was introduced, that prior plan, as Exhibit A6 several months ago. All right. Am I correct? Yes,
You said eight?
A6,
It was six.
6. And with that prior plan, do you recall that your additional parking spaces that were proposed, well, I'm sorry, that was required was 255 spaces, 255 spaces?
That sounds right.
And yet the plan had been for 295 spaces. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. So, but as of tonight, you've gone from 295 spaces to 525 new spaces.
Correct.
Now, this is a concept plan only, correct?
At the time. Yeah.
Okay. And when we look at your plan, we don't see any provision for dumpsters or trash removal on the property. Is that correct?
Correct. My understanding is that's going to be handled with internal trash rooms, and that dumpster enclosures aren't going to be a feature.
Okay. Do you show on your plan where trash trucks are going to come in to pick up those
Not
materials?
this time, no, we do not.
Okay. And when you designed your concept plan, did you make sure to review the township's zoning ordinance and subdivision and land development ordinance to make sure that your plan met with the requirements for a development such as this?
We did so knowing that the density obviously is at odds with the current zoning, and the building height could be also problematic.
Okay. When you were doing your concept plan, did you take note of the setback requirements?
Yes,
And are they reflected in this concept plan?
they're not reflected, but they are met and exceeded quite a bit.
Okay. How about landscape buffers? Are those reflected in your plan, and do they comply with the ordinance requirements?
We are not showing a landscape buffer, but that would be a will comply scenario if we get that far.
Okay. Have you done any traffic studies in connection with this proposed development?
We have not.
You've given testimony tonight about traffic being two-way on two separate roads. Am I correct? Both of those roads are private drives right now.
They are, yes.
And as you sit here tonight, you don't have any testimony as to anticipated trips in and out of those drives on a daily
We
basis.
do not, no.
And looking at your plan, you don't provide for any other access to and from this site, correct?
No, we do not.
Okay. And did I understand your testimony correctly that a portion of this property goes all the way over to Harrisburg Pike and connects at that?
It does.
Sure.
It would have to cross Swar Run to do so, but it does.
Okay. Was any evaluation given to allowing for that portion of property to be an access point or in and out of the property?
It wasn't.
Why not?
There are existing apartments that would impediment to us connecting that way. And also Swar Run crossing would be a factor in that as well.
And when you say a factor, in terms of feasibility or in terms of expense?
Well, we haven't done hyper accurate survey along Swar Run to know exactly what we'd be contending with there, but certainly there's red herring area that would have to be dealt with, and not maybe infeasible, but probably not the first choice.
Okay. Now, what is the height of the buildings that you show on your concept plan?
Those are 48 feet. from the grade at the base of the building to the top.
Okay. And are you aware of what the requirements are currently pursuant to the zoning ordinance for height?
I am-
Okay, and what is that?
It is, help me out, it's with 35 feet.
Okay.
Yeah,
And would you agree that when you prepared your plan previously, that provided for only 198 or 196 units, that plan was designed with buildings that complied with the height requirements in the township?
yes.
Okay. Tell us about the square footage of each of these buildings. What is the area on those?
I am referring to, this is something that the architect prepared, and I'm just reading what they've done, but I understand that these buildings are roughly 24,300 square feet each. That's the
24,300,
Yeah,
Okay.
that's not the gross square footage, that's just the area.
just the area. And are you aware of what the township requirements are?
I believe it's 10,000.
So these buildings are more than double.
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall when you prepared your plan previously for 196 proposed units that those buildings actually fit within the township's requirements for area?
I do.
Okay. Looking at the impervious coverage for the plan that's proposed this evening, is this more impervious coverage or less than what was previously proposed with 196 units?
It is more, I think we have, as you mentioned, 525 parking spaces versus 296. So, it is more.
Does your plan provide for any recreation areas?
It does, yeah.
Okay, how so?
Well, not exactly pictured, but that central courtyard is intended to be amenity space. There is likely to be a swimming pool or some similar facility there, as well as activity spaces on the lower level of the building, appearing on this exhibit at the bottom, and I'll try to push the wrong button.
When you say this exhibit, you're referring to A47?
47, yes, and it's the building that is in the center closest to the bottom of the screen.
I'm sorry, what's your explanation about that building?
That building it has fewer units. The ground floor of that is intended to have some amenity space and therefore activity space and so forth.
Okay, you referenced a pool. Where would that be located?
It would directly relate to that ground floor of the unit that I was just mentioning at the bottom center of the screen, which is A47.
Okay, so it would be an indoor pool?
No, I think it's intended to be outdoor and it would be in the courtyard space. We're just not showing it on this.
When you did your calculations for impervious surface, did you include those courtyard spaces?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
What questions? So I understand this is a concept plan, but one of the things you were bringing up was it would exceed existing township regulations and zoning. However, township does allow in other zoned areas, multifamilies in excess of 60 feet. And there is no requirement on the square footage. So why bring that up when it's allowed in other sections of the township?
Well, I'm bringing it up because it's part of the relief that they're requesting. If you recall from prior hearings, they put on testimony and are making an argument that the design requirements in the zoning ordinance, it's not just a question of density. They're saying they need bigger buildings, both in area and in height. So I wanted to clarify that because that did not come out during his direct exam as to what they're seeking with their plan, to what extent. And keep in mind, when they proposed a plan previously, they did comply with the township requirements, even seeking multifamily dwelling.
Right,
Yeah,
so they didn't
Correct.
comply with, parade.
correct. That was the only thing they were seeking relief on. Now they're seeking relief on a host of issues.
Yeah, just one, I think. So other than the density, the height, and I guess the square footage, the plan would not need any other variances from the zoning ordinance.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Through land development,
Yes.
through land development.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience have questions or on Zoom have questions for the witness? Seeing none.
Yes, please.
Will this witness?
Yes, please. Brief redirect. Mr. Best, the township solicitor asked you about landscape buffering on the site, and you mentioned that that would be a will comply item. Excuse me, does that mean that in your opinion, any landscape buffering that would be required on the perimeter of this site or elsewhere, you would be able to provide and comply with?
Yes,
The township solicitor also asked about circulation for trash trucks, and you stated that that wouldn't be necessary because your understanding is that the trash would be contained within the buildings. Is there any other element or aspect or requirement to actually build, develop and operate the proposed plan that you couldn't provide or comply with respect to this A47?
I'm not aware of, no.
The township solicitor asked you about whether you were involved in the variance application during which the exhibit A6 that's been admitted into the record in this hearing was presented, correct?
Correct.
And you stated that you participated in that process.
I did.
In that application, my client sought a variance to build the development shown on exhibit A6, correct?
Correct.
And my understanding is that you answered the township solicitor question about the footprint of the building shown on A6 and whether that complied with the township's maximum footprint for a multifamily building, and you said it did, correct? And the township solicitor asked you whether the height of the building shown on A6 complied with the current township height limitation, and you indicated that they did, correct?
Yes,
Is it your understanding that notwithstanding those two elements of A6 complying with the township ordinance, that the relief in that case was denied by the township zoning hearing board?
yes,
Were you involved in preliminary discussions with the township on denser plans than what's shown on A6 before the variance application was filed?
I was.
And those were discussed with the township staff?
That
You
was
were-
that well, yeah,
You were involved in those discussions?
I was.
What was the outcome of those discussions on the denser plans?
The recommendation staff made to us at that point was that the variance request that we were seeking, petition that we were about to submit was going to be better received if we had a lower density. Fewer units, I guess I should say.
No further questions.
Mr. Hanson.
Mr. Beth, the previous variance request last year, which is shown on A6, was 8.5 units per acre.
Yes,
This one here is 10 point, what did we say?
10.27.
10.27. Can this property be designed to do that 10.27 and still meet the requirements of square footage?
It's an interesting question. I don't know that I have a definitive answer for you, but
I'm no architect, but I'm looking at what was submitted back as A6. Looking at current 847, whatever it is. And to me, you could meet the square footage and the height requirement at 10.27. Yeah, I'm no architect, but to me, you could meet that on the property. Whether you need variance for pervious coverage. Yeah, that was those numbers, but I'd be interested to know that. If that's Mr. Oswald, appreciate that.
You have anything else?
I do not. Thank you.
Seeing that there's no one in the audience and or on Zoom, the questions. Mr. Best, thank you.
thanks.
Mr. Manning.
I have nothing further this evening, Mr. Chairman.
You have nothing else?
I don't know. Thank you.
Well, with that, we're going to conclude tonight's meeting, but before we do that, let's just make sure that everybody's on the same page. If I'm correct, October's meeting should be on the 17th, as was agreed to in beginning on the third Thursday of the month.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, Mr. Abel, Spike.
Yes, that's fine.
I'm available on that date. Can we go off the record, please?
Yeah, we can go through.
There was a discussion at the outset of the hearing tonight and part
Sure, there.
Every third Thursday is yours.
Yeah, you wouldn't miss it for a little. So I guess with that, then this special meeting stands adjourned until the next month. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Appreciate everything. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. You are so fucked up. Hold on a second.
Work this.